All right, everyone, I have 2:30, so we'll go ahead and get started, or I should say 2:30 Central Time. Those of you that are in this time zone, we'll go ahead and get started here. I think you can all hear me and you should be able to see my screen at this point. If you're having any troubles, let me know. Just put any questions in the chat box, or if you're having any troubles at all. And then Aspen and Taylor will kind of keep an eye on that and let me know if there's anything going on. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera just so I have one less screen to look at. Okay. All right. So welcome to the 2024 annual training for the Summer Food Service Program. I am Jessica Fermansky, and I'm a program specialist at Nebraska Department of Education, working in nutrition services with the school meals programs. I also have Taylor Schorsch and Aspen Kosmachek with me today, so you'll be hearing from both of them. And here's our summer squad, so feel free to reach out to any of us. We will share our contact information at the end of this training. You can feel free to reach out to any of us and we can hopefully provide the answers that you need, or at least send you in the right direction or find it if we need to. So that's who you're looking for the summer squad. Housekeeping, of course, this training is being recorded so that we can post on our SFSP training section of the NDE website later for viewing. So if you ever need to look back and review this, it will be on our website. We do not care if you have your camera on or off. That is your choice. Sometimes it's nice to have it off so you can focus on the content, which is what I'm doing today. Please mute your microphones to avoid feedback and background noise as much as possible. If you have a question, though, and you need to unmute, please feel free to do so. And type any questions that you have in the chat box. We'll try to check on those periodically just to make sure that we're keeping track of all of the questions, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can today. And of course, the handouts were emailed, so hopefully everyone that received the link to this training should have received the handouts. If you have not, I will email them again after the end of this, and we have and you've completed your attendance certificate. I will also, when I send out that certificate, that training certificate, I will send the handouts there as well. So don't panic if you don't have them quite yet. And of course, stay on till the end because there will be an attendance form to complete. We'll have a simple Google form. We will put it in, we'll put the link in the chat, and then you can click on that link in the chat box and it'll take you to the Google form to fill that out. But we can get to that later when we pull that up. All right. This is our agenda today. Of course, it is jam-packed. We have lots of stuff to go over. We did put in extra time today just to make sure that we were able to answer any questions. But we wanted to let you know that there is quite a bit on this agenda today, but we likely won't take the entire time that we had slotted. On the agenda, you will see at the end the rural non-congregate as applicable. So once we get to that point, we will pull up that attendance record so that those of you that will not be participating in rural non-congregate do not have to continue on. You can simply sign the attendance record and then excuse yourself from the meeting. So just mention that will give an option for that at the end once we get close to that section. All right, so we will start with program requirements. All right, so on the CFR 200, so this Code of Federal Regulations, that's what CFR stands for. And this is just the set of program regulations that apply to all federal programs. So the regs aren't overly prescriptive because every organization is different and we understand that. But no matter the type, size, or structure of your organization that receives federal funds, there must be sound internal procedures and controls in place to document exactly how the funds were used. So we are just looking to make sure that we could trace every penny that was spent, that you receive on reimbursement for summer meals to ensure that it was spent only on the summer food service program. And so that's basically what these CFR program regulations state. All right, so in addition, program regulations for SFSP require area eligibility. So this area eligibility allows you to be able to serve meals to all children for free, ages 1 to 18 in the eligible areas. So there are a couple ways to know if you have an area eligible site. Of course, that means that 50% of your children are eligible for free and reduced meals at your location. And you can either find that out by school meals claim data or by census data that is available from the SFSP area eligibility map. And on this next slide, you'll be able to see what that looks like. So I just entered an address into the SFSP area eligibility map. And of course, I wanted to use an exact site address to determine location eligibility. So if you put in your exact site in the eligibility map and it comes up in this pink shaded area, like you see on the slide, anything in that pink shaded area would be area eligible. So that would mean that you could serve free summer meals to anyone ages 1 to 18. If your site falls into that blue area or kind of grayish blue area, then you would not be considered area eligible, and we would have to look at some other options on how you could serve meals to that area. So just something to keep in mind when you go in to look at eligibility for your sites. And if you have questions about that, please reach out because we can help out on determining eligibility. All right, so more program requirements. So there are a couple of site types or typical site types that we see. Open sites operate in low-income areas where at least half of the children come from families with incomes at or below 185% of the federal poverty level, making them eligible for free and reduced price school meals, and meals are served free to any child at the open site. So open sites are probably our most common sites that we see, where it's just anybody that comes along, any child ages 1 to 18 that comes along and wants a meal is going to receive one for free. Okay. And then our enrolled sites also provide free meals to children, and those children are enrolled in activity or program at the site where at least half of them are eligible for free and reduced price meals. So it's a little bit different. They're enrolled in a program there instead of just being an open site where anyone can come and, and receive a free meal. Or not anyone, any child, sorry, any ages 1 to 18 child. And then camps are another site type, and they may also participate in the summer food service program. They receive payments only for the meals served to children who are eligible for free and reduced price meals. Campsites must offer a continuous schedule of organized cultural or recreational programs for enrolled children between meal services. So again, camps are just a little bit different type of a site, and only those kiddos that are eligible to receive free and reduced meals are going to receive those. So there's the different site types that we see. One of the program requirements is that you advertise your open sites. So we just want to make sure that participants are aware of what sites are open. It's important to post those site rules, your dates, your times, where you are located. Specifically, if you are serving breakfast and lunch, have those specific times posted visibly for anyone that could come by and say, oh, I could get my breakfast here today from this time to this time. Make sure that if you have any site rules, and most of you likely do, that those are posted as well. And this is just an example of what that could look like. All right. So another program requirement is staff training. So all of the USDA training and guidance manuals that you see up on this screen are available on our website. You can see how they're pictured. The administration guide is probably one of the most common ones, and that you can find on our website as well. We have links to those if you need help finding them, we can provide that. But these are probably the guides that you'll use the most for staff training, and just any questions that come up. You can refer to these guides for those answers. And with staff training, of course, it's important to make team members aware of the program's purpose. Make sure that they understand the importance of record keeping. that there is a meal pattern that must be followed and documented. Make sure that your staff know which site visits must be completed. And then, of course, we want to make sure there's a responsible person who is completing those site visits. Any reporting procedures necessary for the sponsor, we want to make sure that your staff are aware of those reporting procedures. And then, of course, civil rights, which we'll get into a little bit more here, but or in a few slides, but that is another requirement for staff training is civil rights. All right. So SFSP training on the NDE website, you can find our civil rights that is sort of outlined there in red. Specifically, if you go to the summer food service program, which is indicated there in the purple arrow, and then that'll bring sort of this little pop-down menu, and then you'll see the training, and that link will take you directly to SFSP training, specifically civil rights training. And we have the link to that if you need to find that. All staff must be trained on the civil rights requirements of USDA child nutrition programs, and that includes the summer food service program. There's additional training on our website, but it's of utmost importance that all sites know that they must visibly display the "And Justice for All" poster. There are no exceptions to that. So even if you have an outdoor site, you're going to want to make sure that there's some place to post that, if you need it laminated, somewhere that you can post that, because that is a requirement for all sites. So make sure you have that "And Justice for All" poster. If you need one, the link there will take you to a link where you can order that. And we do have most of our program specialists have some on hand that we can possibly mail to you, but please let us know if you're in need of an "And Justice for All" poster. All right, and another program requirement is to document all training. So of course, we want you to use training as a tool for your team. It's important that you have a training log, that it identifies the topics, what was discussed during the training, the date that the training happened, and then what team members attended. And we actually have a training log on our website, and you can find that again. Just go to our NDE website. You'll be able to look at all of our documents there, including this training log. If you have trouble finding it, let us know. We can send you the direct link. All right, so with program requirements, we discussed attending training. So of course, those of you that are sponsors that are attending training today, you will take this training and utilize it to so that you know what you need to be training your own staff on at your sites, your site staff. You're going to be training your staff on program and civil rights. You're going to be looking for eligible meal service sites utilizing the SFSP map, or if you are a school, you might be using claims data. You're going to want to look at monitoring your sites. How do I need to monitor them? When do I need to monitor them? Keep all of your summer food service program records for the current year plus 3 previous years. So those are some record keeping guidance that you need to be aware of. Of course, you'll be serving free meals to children ages 1 to 18 years. And then something that we want to mention is that you are not allowed to serve meals to only summer school students. So if you have a summer school program at your location and you have summer school students there, you may not serve only meals to them. You would also need to be an open site to where people that are not, or those children that are not enrolled in that summer school, can still come and receive a free meal at your site. So that's an important piece to note on the program requirements. If you have questions about that, please reach out and we can answer any of those questions regarding summer school students. All right, I've got a little break built in here for some chat questions. Did anything come through right now that we need to answer? If we have the same employees that went through the civil rights training, does that count for summer food service program? So if you have employees that maybe worked at the school and they've already received civil rights training while they were at the school, yes, that can count. It just has to be done annually. So if they've already received it this year, that's fine. But you're going to want to make sure that you have that when the date that training was completed, what topics were discussed, and who was there. So you're going to want to make sure that that ends up on your training log. And if there was a certificate or something that came with that training, make sure that you hold on to that as well. Okay, does anybody else have any other questions that they want to ask? Oh, is there an updated Injustice for All poster, or is the latest one dated September 2019? Great question. Yes, so the latest one is the 2019 one, and it still has, if you have a picture of I think it was the Statue of Liberty, that is the old one. So you want to make sure that you get rid of that one and you'll put up the new one that has, I think it's the USDA building. Is that right? I think there's a building in the background of it. But yes, that one is the most recent one. We have not received any updated ones that have been printed since then. So good question. Let's see. Any other questions, Taylor or Aspen? Is there anything else coming through that I can't see?
Nope, I'm not seeing anything on my end.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for your questions. Continue to put those in the chat, and we will have a couple more chat check-ins just to make sure that we answer all of those questions. All right. Go ahead and move on here. All right. So the next thing we're going to look at is application and claims. Our online application. So of course, every sponsor will be filling out an online application in CNP, which is our software where we keep track of all of the online applications for all of our school meals programs. That is going to be due May 3rd, 2024. You must note that all sites must have approved applications, and all sponsor application packets must be approved before meals can be claimed for reimbursement. And so the reason that we have that May 3rd deadline is because oftentimes there are errors, or people have questions or things that are sort of pending that we at the state can help to troubleshoot, but we need a little bit of time to do that. So even though June 1st is our deadline to have those applications in, we actually utilize May 3rd. So that gives us plenty of time to help troubleshoot any of those things that we need to do in your online application to make sure that by June 1st it is approved by us and you can serve meals. Because if you serve meals prior to that online application packet being approved, then you will not be able to claim those meals. So it's really important to stick to that due date of May 3rd. It gives us at the state plenty of time to review all of the applications that come in and fix any errors before you guys start service. Okay. And this is what the application looks like. I've sent an application guide to everyone. You should have received that. If you haven't, please let me know. Reach out to me, send an email, and I will get that application guide to you. But you should have received it already. And this is what the screen looks like in CNP. This is what the application packet looks like. So you'll fill out the sponsor application. You will have a budget detail that you will need to fill in. If you have a food production facility, you would be filling out that. There's a checklist summary for any attachments that you might need to put in there. And then, of course, all of your site applications are included as well. And then there is a field trip spot there where we will discuss that a little bit later on in this training. So this is just what it looks like in CNP. One part of the sponsor application is the reporting requirements related to the UEI. So that's your unique entity ID, and that is circled in that red box there, or excuse me, that red circle there. It's a 12-digit UEI number, and we want to make sure that everyone is aware that your application cannot be approved if your current SAM.gov registration renewal date has expired. So if your renewal date was, like, for example, on this one, August of 2023, which you might see when you get in if you haven't filled out this application for a year, we would want to see the new date that was renewed, okay? So just make sure that your UEI has been renewed, and then you'll put in that renewal date, the next renewal date in that area where the green arrow is. SAM.gov is pretty good about sending notices. You'll start to receive those about 3 months in advance. So just make sure that you're paying attention to those. Typically, it's a bookkeeper or maybe an administrator type person that does that. So even if you don't have that information, there might be somebody at your organization that does. But this is a requirement for all organizations that are receiving federal funds. So you should have that information. All right. And of note here is that the UEI is free. So never pay for your UEI number or the renewal. Acquiring it and renewing it is free. I know that we've seen in the past, there are some companies that try to catch you off guard and you get some emails about renewing that UEI and they offer help for a fee. And just note that that is not a legitimate sam.gov email. That is a company that's trying to charge you to renew that UEI, and that is completely unnecessary. You can do that for free on your own. So make sure that if you are the person that's in charge of that for your organization, that you are not paying for that and that you are receiving a legitimate email from sam.gov. Okay. All right, so within the CNP application packet, at the very bottom, you will see the site applications. And so what we'll have there is a list of all of the sites that are available for your entity or your organization to use as a sponsor. If you see this green check mark there, that means that they have been approved. Otherwise, there will be a little red, I think it's a red X that says that they're not approved. And that's okay. We just want to make sure that all of the sites that you plan to use, that you submit. If you do not plan to use those sites, then simply do not modify them. So, oh yeah, it's a little red arrow, sorry. So if you see the red arrow and the status is pending validation, that's fine. If you plan that, if you're a sponsor, if you're not planning to use that site, that's fine. So just leave those. They won't be deleted. I know it's kind of annoying to see them in that list, but just leave them alone. So they're there. You don't have to modify them, but just leave them in there and just utilize the ones that you will be using. So just go in and modify the ones that you will. All right, so something that you need to keep in mind if you are a park site or you maybe have a site outside at like a gazebo or a community area and you're outdoors, please keep in mind that you must identify a plan for inclement weather. So you could possibly move meal service indoors if possible, or it could just be that you have nowhere else to go. And so the meals simply can't go on at that site. Just make sure that you're posting signage that lets your folks know, if there is inclement weather, rain, thunderstorms, things like that, what the plan is, either that the site will not be operational that day if there's inclement weather, or that it's been moved inside and where that is. And within that CNP application, there will be a question asking if you are an outdoor or mobile site, and then it will also ask you to indicate your plan for serving meals during those inclement weather times. Okay, so just be thinking about that if you are an outdoor site. Average daily participation. So this is another thing that you will enter into the CNP application. ADP stands for your average daily participation, and you're going to want to adjust this as necessary. I know some of you are going to be potentially trying rural non-congregate RNC this summer, and so maybe your average daily participation will increase. We hope that it does, but if it does, this is something that you'll be adjusting in the CNP application. And what it lets us know at the state is the maximum number of meals that can be served at a site, and it's just an estimate. Of course, it can be adjusted, but it helps to reduce waste, it helps to improve integrity, it helps for planning with ordering and making of meals. And one way that you can somewhat tell maybe what your participation is going to be is to use 2023's participation as your guide. And you can go back and look at your old applications from last year's application. You can switch the year and CNP and go and look at those just to kind of get an idea of what your ADP was last year. And maybe your ADP in June is different than your ADP, say, in July or August as summer starts to wind down. So you might be constantly adjusting that ADP, and there is a spot in the CNP application for that. Each time that you send that in, it will need to be approved by us, just to let you know that. You'll submit the entire application, and then it will be something that we will approve. But yeah, it tells NDE how many children are served on an average day. Like I said, that helps with our integrity of the program. It sets each site's cap, so the max daily average number of meals. You'll revise the ADP in the site app and then submit for approval. Whenever you submit for approval, there is a little spot at the bottom where you can list some comments. And that's where if you had a large jump in participation, just send us a little note to say, we are trying RNC this year and we really had great participation and we're seeing higher numbers or something. If there was, something else going on in your community and all of a sudden you saw a jump in kids coming for meals, just send us a quick blurb and then send that adjusted ADP into us and we'll get it approved for you. But one important thing about that is please do it before you submit the claim. If you go in and try to submit a claim with a lower ADP, the system is going to flag that as like, wait, they were not supposed to have that many meals. Why are they serving that many meals? And it's going to flag and not let you enter or not let you successfully submit your claim. So then you would likely be wondering what's going on, probably call us and we would say, oh, your ADP is too low. Go ahead and adjust that and submit it. We will approve it. And then likely your claim will go through without issues. So just something to be aware of. All right, so I said we'd get back to field trips. And again, this is one of the areas that you'll fill in on the CNP application. This is just where we hold the documentation for field trips. When SFSP participants are taken off the approved meal service site, so, to visit a swimming pool, for example, and they'll be eating their SFSP meal off-site, a field trip request must be completed. So you see the red arrow, that's where the site field trip request can be made for single-day field trips only. They must be submitted at least 24 hours before the meals will be taken off-site. And a new request must be made for each day that meals that meals will be served off-site. So anytime there's a field trip, you're going to want to include that on there. You can see on this one, there was 180 field trips. So that might be a lot of them, but we want to know that at least 24 hours in advance. Sponsors are not allowed to claim meals served off-site if NDE was not notified in advance. So please take note of that, because if you are sending these meals off-site and you did not complete this site field trip list, then you would not be able to claim those meals. So please make sure that you're doing it at least 24 hours in advance. I know some folks, they go in and they put those all in at the beginning of the summer. It's kind of, however it works for you, but just make sure that you know that you will not be able to claim meals if that has not been completed. Okay. Dietary accommodations. So of course, federal regulations require accommodations for special dietary needs, and the sponsor application asks you to ensure that this will take place. So when you get into your sponsor application, you're going to see this question: does this site anticipate the need to plan and or prepare special diets for children with disabilities? And just like it says in this application guide, yes is the answer to that question, because you are federally required to do so. You must ensure that children's dietary needs are accommodated in the event that they need a meal substitute required by a medical condition. And we have a medical statement form, and it helps to provide that documentation that you need for meal pattern substitutions. If you need help finding that, it's under special diets on our website. We can send that out as well. But if you know that you have some kiddos that are going to be needing some dietary accommodations, please make sure that's filled out so that you can adhere to those federal regulations. All right, so claims for reimbursement. Make sure that you have a plan for who is responsible for monthly claims. So likely this is going to be at the sponsor level that you're going to want to know who is responsible for those. The claims are submitted individually for each month that the meals are served. Claims must be submitted and accepted no longer than 60 days after the last day of the month the meals were served. That's an important date to note. So again, make sure that that person who is responsible for those monthly claims knows about that 60-day deadline. And then we say a best practice is to submit your claims by noon on the 10th of each month. That helps to make sure that if you started to do a claim and there was an issue, let's say your ADP rose and you didn't realize it, it gives you plenty of time to get that in, get that application updated, get it submitted to us. We've approved it, and now you can submit your claim. So that's just a best practice. It's not a hard and fast deadline, but it is helpful if you ever have issues to get those claims in as early as possible. And then on our website, we do have SFSP claim entry hints. And you can see that box is kind of squared around that green box around that area. You can, if you click on that link, it pulls up a document that just gives you some helpful claim entry hints and tips. And so whoever's responsible for entering those claims might want to take a look at that document just to get ahead of the game and know how to do those claims. All right, we are going to see who's been paying attention. We have a couple of questions here, and just fill these in the chat box. So how many days after the last day of a claim month does a sponsor have to submit a claim for reimbursement? Now, we just went over this, so hopefully everybody gets this one right. I'm going to look at the chat here. All right, you guys are paying attention. Good job. Thank you. So it looks like, there we go. 60 days is, of course, the answer. We want to make sure that whoever's responsible for those claims is aware of this deadline. Okay. And what must be approved before meals served at a site are eligible for reimbursement? All right. Yep. Application. Some of you are getting real specific. Good job. Great. So, of course, both the site application and or applications, in the case that you have more than one site, and the sponsor application must be completed before you are eligible for reimbursement. So of course, the entire application packet is what we're looking for here, both sponsor application and then those site applications that fall within that packet. Good job, guys. I think there might be one more here. Oh, I think there's two more actually. All right. When is the deadline to submit an application to serve SFSP meals in 2024? Remember what that date was? I said, please submit it. It's earlier than what we need just to make sure. Oh, yeah. Okay. You guys have it. You are correct. It's May 3rd, and that just gives us plenty of time to get those applications in before meal service begins. And, oh, no. Okay. So that was it. All right. So we'll be moving on to site monitoring and documentation. And I think one of my coworkers is going to be taking over here.
Yes, thank you, Jessica.
All right. Yep, I'm going to mute myself and I'll let you take over, Aspen.
Okay. Yep. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. So I'll go ahead and we'll jump into site monitoring and documentation and covering the responsibilities of both the site monitors and site supervisors. Next slide, please. So sponsors should assign a site monitor to visit the sites. Site monitors are critical to the successful operation of the SFSP sites. And this individual must be detail-oriented and organized, and somebody that really feels confident in the program requirements and isn't afraid to contact NDE to ask any questions or clarify any of the requirements when needed. Site monitors do not have to be on site at all times, but they are the direct link between the sponsors and the site supervisor and the food service staff. Site monitors are responsible for completing some site visits. They must ensure that the site maintains daily records, including the point of service meal counts, production records, and delivery tickets. They should ensure that the Injustice for All poster is clearly posted during all meal times. And they should maintain communication with the sponsor and the site supervisor. And they should really work well with the staff and the site supervisor just on getting any issues corrected and providing any additional training as necessary. Next slide, please. And then your site supervisors are typically responsible for maintaining daily records in compliance with those federal regulations. So, for example, your sponsor's reimbursement is based on the daily records that you keep of the meals that are prepared, delivered, and served. So, it's very important to remember that any missing or incomplete records can result in a denial of claim or a denial of costs. So, um, just be sure that you're maintaining those records, making sure they're filled out completely after your meal service. Again, that's just one of the responsibilities of the site supervisors. They're also responsible for ensuring that meals are served only during the approved meal times. They must also verify that meals meet meal pattern and are served at the proper temperature. And then they should be ensuring that the meals served have all of the required food components. Next slide, please. Site supervisors are also responsible for making sure that the point of service meal counts are being completed when the meals are served and ensuring that children are served before adults. They must be able to implement any corrective action items for identified areas and comply with any guidance provided by their site monitors. And then site supervisors are also required to remain on site during the entire meal service time. So, regardless of site attendance, site supervisors must be on site for the entire meal time. And then you can also find more information on the responsibilities and expectations of the site monitors and site supervisors in that USDA training and guidance manual. And that was shared earlier in the chat by Taylor. So if you have questions related to those responsibilities, that's available to you. And then you can always reach out to us for questions as well. Now we're going to jump into the 3 different site visits that are required. You can find the pre-operational site visit form, or also called the pre-approval site visit form, in your training handouts. So this site visit, the administrative staff or the site monitors are responsible for completing this visit at all new sites and at sites that have operated in the past, but with operational issues, such as needing technical assistance or a second site visit from the previous year in an effort to correct a problem. This is also required for any sites that had a corrective action plan in the prior year. So they must have that pre-operational site visit before their operation begins. This is just a nice opportunity to ensure that the site supervisor understands all program requirements and to ensure that the site is ready to accommodate the summer food service program. Next slide, please. The second site visit is the first 2-week site visit, and you can also find this form in your training handout. The first week site visits, which can be completed by the site supervisor, are required for all new sites, new RNC sites, and sites with identified operational issues during the previous year. The first week site visit must be conducted in the first 2 weeks of the program operation and must be conducted during a meal service. So this site helps to identify potential problems such as inadequate documentation on production records, delivery tickets, or on daily meal count forms. Other potential issues may be related to operating outside of the approved and advertised meal times, not counting meals at the point of service, or if there are any health inspection violations. So this visit is just a nice opportunity for sponsors to ensure that their sites are operating within the requirements and that meals served are able to be claimed for reimbursement. Next slide, please. Okay. And then the last site visit that we'll discuss is the annual site visit. And this form, again, is in your handouts. This visit can also be completed by the site supervisor and is required for all sites within the 4 weeks of operation. So again, it's just a visit that must be conducted during a meal service and offers a way to identify any areas where there could be potential problems identified, and then the site supervisor would work to get those corrected. And then that kind of covers the site visits and documentation that's required. If there are any questions, you can let us know or pop them in the chat. And I think we're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute break.
Okay, so we'll come back at 3:15. Does that sound good? That gives us just a chance to look at I think there was another question or something.
Oh, okay.
Let me look here. Okay, so on the 60 days to submit the claim, technically that means we could submit both June and July at the same time. However, the people doing our audit last year said that wasn't the case. Can you clarify? 60 days to submit. Well, I mean, there's going to be a couple months that would fall within that 60 days. I guess I don't know what the context of that is. If you waited until after, because you'd have to wait until after June to submit June, and you'd have to wait until after July to submit July. So you're thinking of waiting till after both of those months to submit?
Yeah, I'm
Feel
thinking they're
free to,
asking maybe. Oh, sorry, Jessica, go ahead.
no, that's okay. I was gonna say, just feel free to reach out to us because I'm not exactly sure the context of that question. But of course, you'd have to wait until the end of each month to submit those claims. And like we said, it is a best practice to try to do it on the 10th of the following month by noon if you can. So if by July 10th, if you could submit June's claim, and then by August 10th, you would submit July's claim. I think that's probably the best practice in that situation. I hope I answered that question for Kim. If not, please reach out and we can work through that. And that is the only question that I see right now. Okay, so we have about 3 minutes left, so feel free to take a quick break, and then we'll be back here at 3:15.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jessica and Aspen, for kicking us off. I'm going to go ahead and get us going again as we talk about the meal pattern requirements. They might not be back yet. Perfect. Thank you so much. So we'll be discussing the meal pattern requirements. Awesome. So the summer food service meal pattern chart can be found on the NDE website and in your handout packet. It is a useful tool to ensure compliance with the SFSP meal pattern requirements. If you have not already done so, please take a few moments to familiarize yourself with the SFSP meal pattern as it differs from the NSLP meal pattern. Next slide, please. Breakfast should consist of all three components listed in the table: milk, fruit or vegetable, and grain or bread items. It is recommended to serve whole fruits and vegetables, whether fresh, frozen, canned, or dried, instead of juice. Whole fruits and vegetables offer more nutrition and help with calorie management. Additionally, serving whole grains is encouraged for their superior nutrition content, including fiber, antioxidants, B vitamins, and iron. Next slide. Please ensure that both lunch and supper meals consist of 5 items, with each meal containing all 4 component groups: fluid milk, 2 fruit or vegetable items, a grain or bread, and a meat alternate. It is recommended that juice be 100% juice, but we also encourage serving whole fruits or vegetables. Additionally, grains should be whole or enriched. Next slide. Snacks must include any 2 of the 4 component groups: milk, fruit vegetable, grain breads, and meat alternate. However, a snack cannot include only a juice and a milk. This is not an allowable combination. Next slide. So meals can be prepared by the sponsor or purchased as unitized meals that include all necessary components, with or without the milk included. Meals must be served during the approved meal times as indicated in your site application. If proper temperature holding equipment is not available at the site, vended meals cannot be delivered more than 1 hour before meal service. So in order to receive reimbursement for meals claimed, it is necessary to provide production records or delivery tickets. These documents serve as both the site's and the sponsor's documentation, confirming that the required meal components were served. Production records and delivery tickets should include the full date, the meal prepared, site name, and must clearly identify the meal components and quantities prepared of each component. For schools that are SFSP sponsors, they have the option to use the NSLP or the SBP meal pattern and production records. Thank you. To review the production records, we will start by focusing on the top portion. So as per NSLP requirements, production records or delivery tickets are necessary for all meals claimed for reimbursement. The production records serve as the site's and sponsors' documentation confirming that the required meal components were served. The top portion of the production record should include the complete date, meal type, such as breakfast, lunch, dinner, or snack, the sponsor and site name, the menu items, and the serving sizes. It is important to note that this top portion represents the planned menu for each site and may not necessarily align with what was actually served on that day. Next slide, please. We will move to the lower portion of the production records. And this is where you will record what you actually served. And if you want to click one more time, it'll highlight the perfect. So the lower section of the production record is where you will document the actual food items served. So please ensure that each food item is recorded under its corresponding meal component, which you can see highlighted in this yellow box. Next slide, please. So after completing the served food items section, please proceed to the next section where you will list the product name or the commodity number. Indicate whether the item is a standardized recipe by entering SR. This will prompt the program specialist to review your standardized recipes for compliance. Next slide. In the following section, you will document the total amount prepared for each component. This can be done by multiplying your serving size by the number of meals served. For instance, if you served 3/4 cup of fruit to 25 students, you will document that as 3/4 cup times 25. Next slide, please. And then finally, you will document the amount of each component that is left over. This will be helpful for you to determine the appropriate quantity of food to prepare for the next menu cycle. Next slide. So delivery tickets serve as an alternative to production records for sites that do not prepare their food on site, but instead they may have it delivered from a central kitchen or a vendor. Delivery tickets are used as documentation for the site and sponsor to ensure that necessary components were provided in adequate quantities. Each delivery ticket should include the delivery date, the meal type, delivery time, and the temperature on delivery. It's important to note that meals should not be delivered to sites without holding equipment more than 1 hour before meal service. Next slide, please. So here you will see the completed sample for the delivery ticket, and it shows that the meal service type was lunch, the date that it was being delivered, the temperature that it was recorded at delivery, and the time that it was delivered. All of these are essential HACCP components that must be included in every delivery ticket. This school is sending so it looks like a hot ham and cheese sandwich, a 1/2 cup of sliced peaches, a 1/4 cup of baby carrots, and then 1 8-ounce glass or carton of milk. I'm curious if you could find your chat box if this is a reimbursable meal based off of the SFSP meal pattern. If anyone's brave enough. Yes, so we have a yes from Jane. Yes, it is a reimbursable meal. Perfect. I have a few more coming in. The SFSP meal pattern is a little bit different, which is why I wanted to test you guys. But yes, it is required that 3/4 cup of a combination of fruits and vegetables are served. And then it's also considered complete since both the delivery staff and the site staff have initialed it. Next slide, please. And then we have a few more questions. So which components are required to be served at breakfast? You can find your chat box again. Next, we have grain, fruit, milk. Seeing grain, fruit, milk. Yeah, so that is correct. You are required to serve a fluid milk, a grain, and then a fruit vegetable combination. So it could be either a fruit or a vegetable or a combination of the two. It doesn't have to just necessarily be a fruit. Awesome. Go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. So is it allowable to hold the fruit component back from a lunch meal and use it as dessert? Awesome. Everyone's paying attention. Perfect. So no, it is not allowable. All meal components must be served at one time as a unitized meal. Awesome. A site's approved meal service time is 11:30 until 12:15. 3 participants are waiting in the meal service line at 12:15. Should these participants be served a meal? Awesome. Yes. Yes, absolutely. All participants in line at time of meal service is supposed to end can be provided a meal. That meal must be consumed on site. You may consider adjusting or extending your meal service time if this is something that is continually happening as well. Awesome. Next slide. Thank you. So the food buying guide is an essential tool for child nutrition program operators and food manufacturers to assist in purchasing the right amount of food and purchasing it the most economically, and determining the specific contribution each food item makes towards meal pattern requirements. It is the essential resource for food yield information for all child nutrition programs. So I would encourage you all to take some time after this training to kind of familiarize yourself with the food buying guide if you haven't already. I will drop the link in the chat box as well. You can do it based on making your own account, or you can just kind of play around as a guest, but it's definitely a helpful tool when trying to know how to credit certain items. Next slide, please. Thank you. So please note that the food buying guide is not the only method for determining the credible amount of food items. Child nutrition labels and product formulation statements are also used for this purpose. These labels are typically found on the outside of delivery boxes. It is important to remember that commercially prepared combination food items without a CN label or product formulation statement cannot be used. The CN label can be easily identified by its distinct border and is used as a resource to determine how the food item meets the SFSP or NSLP meal pattern requirements. A CN label can be found on the packaging of some commercially prepared food items and through USDA foods. So if a CN label is not provided on products, you can ask your vendor for a product formulation statement, which is shown here on the screen. This provides the same information a CN label would provide, which includes the product name and how it credits towards meal pattern requirements. But please keep all of your CN labels and product formulation statements together in a binder to ensure accuracy. Next slide. So the CN label clearly indicates how this product contributes to the meal pattern. We can see that 3 fully cooked chicken patty fritters, that's a tongue twister, weighing about 1.18 ounces, provides 2 ounces of meat alternate and 1 ounce equivalent for grains. Perfect. And then a child nutrition label does not necessarily mean a product is healthy. CN labels are commonly seen on processed meat or meat alternate products, which may not always be the best choice. It is recommended to stay informed about new products and consider trying healthier options when they are available. Remember to always read the nutrition facts panel to choose healthier options when possible. Please remember that all meals submitted for reimbursement must include a daily meal count. This count should be recorded at the time of the meal service, and only tally marks are allowed for tracking purposes. Please refrain from drawing lines from 1 through 19 to represent that 19 meals were served. And so we'll be going a little bit deeper into these daily meal counts through these next few slides. So when submitting your claim for reimbursement, please remember to include the total number of first meals and second meals served. However, only 2% of the second meals served are eligible for reimbursement. We recommend limiting the second serving of meals for this reason. Additionally, please do not include adult meals or non-program meals in the claim. Next slide, please. So here we see examples of the correct and incorrect method for completing daily meal count forms. The top row enclosed with a green box is the correct method for marking the meals provided to children. The second row enclosed is in the red box, and this is the incorrect method for marking meals, as one line is made through numbers 21 through 35. Each number should be marked one at a time as a staff member observes each child receiving a meal with all components. It is a violation of program requirements to mark the number of meals on this form before the meals are served. Also, sponsors are not allowed to mark 30 meals on this form because 30 meals were sent on a field trip. This must be completed only at the time the meals are served to the children. Next slide, please. Additionally, you cannot count meals by using a tray count or clickers. You must participant. If you serve more meals than one meal count has, you will need to use additional forms to keep tally of meals served. Next slide. So as a reminder, reimbursable meals must have a daily meal count sheet and all food components must be offered. Field trips must have their own daily meal count sheets that are completed on the field trip as the children are provided their fully reimbursable meal. These records cannot be done before the meal nor after the meal. They must be completed at the point of meal service. It is important to indicate field trip on the form and to remember that the regular open site must remain open for any children who choose to have a meal at the site that day. So production records must have information that reflects both the regular meal service and the field trip meals for all the food that was prepared that day. If the on-site and field trip meals are different, including you might be serving a hot lunch at the regular site and then a sack lunch for the field trip. So we'll need to see production records reflecting both of those. Next slide, please. So all sites are required to have thermostat and temperature logs to track food temperatures. These logs help site staff identify when corrective action is needed for food storage, whether it is ensuring food is stored at the proper temperature or discarding items due to time temperature abuse. Additionally, all sites must have hand washing facilities for staff and ensure that employees are trained on proper sanitizing of surfaces and equipment. It is important to note that every site is visited by the local or state health department at least once or twice a year to ensure that food safety measures and precautions are followed at SFSP sites. So for leftover meals, it's important to plan your production schedule or meal orders to avoid excessive leftovers. We understand that this can be challenging, but we encourage you to make efforts to reduce food waste. Observing site participation patterns based on days of the week or menu items available can help you identify the more popular days and adjust your orders or quantities accordingly. Please keep in mind that without proper holding equipment to maintain the correct temperature, leftover meals cannot be stored for the next day. If you have equipment that can hold leftovers for the following day, please ensure you have a plan in place to monitor the temperature and keep the food at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. So, thank you.
All right. Oh, Taylor, were you done? Okay.
Yep.
I will jump into the program flexibilities available in the Summer Food Service Program. The first flexibility we'll talk about is the share table. So this is a program flexibility that allows any unopened, unused whole food items to be placed on a table for sharing with other Summer Food Service Program participants who would like additional helpings of those items. Some examples of allowable items would include fruits with thick inedible peels, such as oranges or bananas, or other commercially packaged ready-to-eat items, such as fruit cups or individual cracker or chip packages. Individual cartons or pouches of milk may also be placed on the share table, as long as the table is equipped with the means to control the temperature and maintain the milk at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. Next slide, please. When equipment is available, any unused, unopened items left on the share table may be placed back into safe storage for use for the following day. You'll want to make sure to follow all required health and food safety standards and to document the food temperatures often through the process of preparation, holding, and service. At the end of the meal service, you can go ahead and document the items as leftovers, and the items can be returned to inventory. Next slide, please. Another program flexibility is the option of the walking grain flexibility. This allows participants to take one fruit or grain item off-site to eat later. This must be a non-perishable item from his or her own meal if the fruit, for example, has an editable skin, or from the sharing table if the fruit has an inedible thick skin. You must remember that it is not okay to share items that have been opened or touched by another participant. So this would open the door for any food safety violations and food risks for foodborne illnesses. So we just want you to be very careful and very observant of those participants if your site chooses to use this flexibility. And then our next slide here just shows some examples, again, of those unopened packaged food items, and then the fruits that would be offered as the walking grain or on the share table. We'll now jump into some allowable program costs. Next slide, please. SFSP reimbursement can be used to cover operating costs, including the costs of foods, non-food supplies, space for food service, and the meals served to adults who are directly involved in the SFSP's meal service. So this would be any adults that are volunteers or paid staff for the meal service. So just a reminder that program adult meals, or any adult meals for that matter, cannot be included in your claim for reimbursement. I believe we just have a few questions to test your knowledge, and then we'll cover some of these questions in more detail. So our first question, allowable or not, foods purchased to prepare meals for children. If you want to go ahead and include your answer in the chat. And I'm seeing a lot of yeses or allowable, and that is correct. So this would be allowable. All meals served to children should be paid for using SFSP reimbursement. Our next question here, coffee purchased for food service staff to drink during breaks. Would this be allowable or unallowable? Okay, great. Yep. So this would be unallowable. I'm seeing a lot of no's in the chat box. So foods not used to serve children a reimbursable meal are not allowed to be paid for using SFSP reimbursement funds. And our next question. So transportation costs related to delivering meals to meal sites, allowable or not? So I think I'm seeing a lot of yeses. So yes, this would be allowable. Transporting meals served to children at approved SFSP sites would be allowable, and you would use the federal mileage rate. And then our last question here, meals served to adults accompanying a child to a meal service, allowable or unallowable? Okay, good job. I'm seeing a lot of no's in the chat. So this would not be allowable. These meals are not used to serve children and therefore not eligible to be paid for using SFSP reimbursement. It is the responsibility of the SFSP sponsors to ensure that program funds are used only for allowable costs, including paying for food or meals if the sponsor uses a vendor or food service management company, or for the staff time spent preparing and serving the SFSP meals. If sponsors end up with a surplus of foods at the end of the operating year, the money can be used in several ways. It could be transferred to the NSLP or CACFP accounts for use there. It could be used to improve the SFSP operation, such as purchasing higher quality foods like more fresh produce or whole grain items. Or the funds could also be saved to use as a startup fund for the following year's SFSP operation. It's just important to note that the state agency will collect any excess funds not used. SFSP reimbursement cannot be used to pay for excess meals ordered or prepared but not served. So this really emphasizes the importance of planning and identifying some of the trends that take place during your program's operation, such as days of the week that tend to be more popular, or maybe menu items that are popular that would increase participation. And then funds cannot be used to pay for meals that do not meet meal pattern, such as not having all of the required meal components, or any meals served off-site or outside of the approved meal service times. The approved meal service time would be the start and end times that are approved in your site application prior to starting your program. So it's very important to keep this in mind and make sure that you are keeping your site application updated if your meal times change. As we mentioned earlier, any meals served outside of that approved time cannot be claimed for reimbursement. And then reimbursement funds cannot be used to pay for foods that are not used for meal service or as part of the unitized meal, like our example of the coffee being provided to SFSP meal service staff. This would not be part of a reimbursable meal and would not be covered by funds. Reimbursement funds can also not be used to provide meals to adults who are not involved in food service, such as a parent or guardian accompanying a child to the SFSP meal. Those adults must pay for their meals, or the sponsor must have a funding source and accounting practices to show that those adult meals are covered by non-federal funds. And then reimbursement cannot be used to cover any spoiled or damaged meals. Next slide, please. Meal reimbursement is based on the number of meals served to children multiplied by the sum of the administrative and operating rates that you see in the bottom of this slide. Sponsors are allowed to receive reimbursement for meals served to children, and those meals must be served at sites listed in your application on the online system. And those sites need to be reviewed and approved by a member of our team. The SFSP reimburses approved sponsors for serving meals that meet federal nutritional guidelines, and sponsors receive payments based on the number of meals they serve, and all meals are served free to children at an open site. You can compare the reimbursement you are estimating to receive based on the meals served to the expenses you expect to incur in operating the program. Sponsors receive $2.97 for every breakfast served and $5.21 for every lunch served to a child, again, as long as those meals meet the nutritional requirements. Next slide, please.
And I just want to say, so the meals to the adults are charged to the adults so that you do not receive the reimbursement for those.
Yes, thank you, Jessica. Okay, we're going to wrap up training here with procurement. So I have a few slides related to the procurement. The three types of purchases are micro purchases, informal purchases, and formal purchases. And sponsors must remember to create and maintain a purchasing plan. The purchasing plan documents that you have planned purchases by forecasting meal counts with the number of new and returning sites. You have also planned meals to meet meal pattern requirements through a cycle menu. And you have planned your orders for vended meals or meal items if you're a self-preparation site, based on both menu items and the number of meals served each day, along with the frequency, which is based on the food quantities that you need. You might also solicit bids from vendors, and depending on what the procurement you use, whether small purchase or formal purchases, you would want to be able to evaluate the information you receive from those vendors, including their delivery schedules, whether or not they include local foods in any of the items they provide to you for purchase, and your payment due dates. You will want to keep those details in mind as they are helpful to ensure that you are able to receive the menu items that you need, and you can get a responsive and responsible supplier that will help you run a successful program. A few things to keep in mind when thinking about what to buy would be selecting products that meet your site's needs and appeals to children. So thinking about what could increase your participation or what would maybe reduce food waste. You want to think about procuring locally if possible and asking vendors to include locally sourced meal items. We want to be aware of the country of origin on your labels, and you must maintain fair and open competition. Micro purchases are likely one of the most common purchases for most of you, but maybe not all. Micro purchases are the purchases that are under $10,000. There's no formal bidding required with micro purchases, and the business must be distributed equally amongst all qualified suppliers. And then informal purchases, or the purchases that are less than $250,000 but more than $10,000, require 3 bids or price quotes. You must do your best to price compare among the 3 qualified suppliers that can give you what you need. And just be sure to maintain all documentation and justification for those purchases. Formal procurement may be used. This is one of the last procurement methods, and it would be any purchases that are $250,000 or greater. These purchases require sealed bids or competitive proposals, and would also require public advertising. And there's an evaluation process that goes along with this. And you'll, again, just want to be sure to keep all documentation and justification for those purchases. And then we want to make sure that you know to utilize minorities, small, and women-owned businesses when possible to provide any items that you serve during the summer meals program. So just keep this in mind when you're making micro purchases or maybe other more formal types of purchases. And then this decision tree is just a nice visual of what we discussed on the last 3 slides with your informal and formal purchases. It demonstrates how the value of the procurement corresponds to the procurement thresholds. And then all procurement procedures require documentation of how the solicitation was conducted, the responses received, and how responses were evaluated and awarded. So I won't go into detail. If you have questions over procurement, you can definitely get a hold of us. And then we do have a sample procurement specification available to you on our website and included in your handouts. This is just a helpful resource when it comes to identifying what items to purchase and who to purchase from based on who's responsive to what you need. So identifying as many specifics as you can will help you determine which supplier is best able to meet your needs for the menu items you serve in your program.
Okay, so the SFSP grant is a grant that the Nebraska Department of Education awards to eligible sponsors. So this grant offers an opportunity for sponsors to use funds for non-recurring expenses incurred in initiating or expanding services under SFSP. So the grants are up to $15,000. They are awarded on a competitive basis. So you might need to purchase equipment to either for like program startup or to accommodate a higher level of participation. So somebody that maybe is doing, an RNC delivery and they need coolers or something like that, this would be something that could help with those purchases. The cost must be prorated for the amount of time used in SFSP. So if you will be purchasing, if you want to purchase a freezer or something like that, and it is also going to be used by the school lunch program, or if you're at a church and that freezer would be staying at that church, you would have to prorate how much of that time it will be used specifically for SFSP. And I can help with that. But, Cambro insulated pan carriers, items for food service, seating tables, steam tables, things like that. So we have a few people that have applied for this. The deadline was originally March 29th, but we did not get a huge response. So we've extended the deadline to May 3rd. You can find this on our website, of course, under SFSP, and then you'll go to grants. It's got the grant application on there, which is a form that you'll fill out. And then there's also the grant instructions that you can easily find this. Now, this is different than just SFSP grant reimbursement. So this is not to be used for food or things like that. These are non-recurring purchases, okay? Non-recurring cost purchases to your program. So if you have questions, please reach out and I can help with that. But this is not startup funds. This is not for food. This is specifically for, equipment or things that you need to get started for your program or things to expand your program. So if you have questions, please let me know. Reach out, but it is on our website and you can find that. Again, you should be remembering that date of May 3rd because it's the same date that the applications are due in CMP. And that's also the same date that this application would be due. You would have to get some bids. So be looking at those instructions clearly on what is expected to receive this grant. All right. And then we are going to go ahead and throw up that attendance record. So this is going to be a link that's going to show up in your chat. And if you click on that link, then you will be able to fill out that attendance record. I'm going to go ahead and look through the chat and see if we have any questions. But you can be filling out that attendance record as we are looking at these. Please click the link in the chat box to fill out that attendance form. How do we set adult pricing? So we would want to see your adult pricing cover the cost of the food and any administrative cost that goes along with that. So I don't know if we've set anything at this point. What did we have for last year? I will send that out if we, I don't know if Katie's on to answer that question either. So it would at least be more than your reimbursement, which would cover the cost of your food and administration costs. I will put that in the responses when I send your training certificate. I will include that adult pricing suggestion from us in there. Okay. Yes, you're welcome. Okay. Let's just take a couple minutes here. Let's come back at 3:55 and we will transition over to that rural non-congregate. I'm going to continue to watch the somebody says they don't see the link. If you just open up your chat, that little box that looks like a bubble. Holly, you can use the SFSP grant for advertising costs. You can, if you go in and read through that SFSP grant, the directions there, you should be able to find some more information on that, but it can be used for advertising costs. Okay, you're welcome. So make sure that you fill out that attendance record and then you will receive the training certificate in a separate email from me, as well as I will include the training slides that we went over today. Oh, good. Taylor did put in the link to setting meal prices for adults as well. And we usually do provide a suggested price, so I will include that in the email. Okay, so we'll start the rural non-congregate in about 2 minutes. Yes, I can include the, it's not a dietary restrictions form. It's going to be a medical statement form, but yes, I will include that. We'll give everybody just 1 more minute to get that attendance record filled out. If you're not staying on for rural non-congregate, feel free to jump off. And of course, here's our contact information if you need to. This will take you to the link that shows our staff roster and how to get a hold of us. So that's what that website is there. And then anybody that wants to jump off, if you're not going to be joining us for the rural non-congregate portion of this, please feel free to do so. Thank you for joining us today, though. Okay. All right, so rural non-congregate, or RNC, as we refer to it here, are meals that can be consumed off-site, and they are, of course, provided to eligible children ages 1 to 18 from approved locations. So individual meals or bulk meals for up to 5 days. We'll get into that a little bit more as we move on through this. And then you must receive special prior approval. It's required to utilize this meal service option. And anybody that does not receive that prior approval, the reimbursement will be disallowed for those meals that were served utilizing RNC. So that's important. There's a portion of the CNP application, if you will be utilizing RNC, where you will indicate that on the application. That is in our application guide. And then there will also be an additional sort of survey. It's going to probably be a Google form to fill out to let us know what your plan is, what your plan is to maintain integrity of the program. We'll just go through that. We would just review that program, what your plan is, and then let you know that you've been approved for RNC. So, all right. So to determine RNC eligibility, of course, you must be in a rural location. So how do we determine this? We utilize the USDA's rural designation tool. And I think Aspen or Taylor, you guys can include that link in the chat for me, please. This is a screenshot of what that looks like for Nebraska. You can see we are mostly rural. So anywhere where it's green is rural. And then anywhere where you see that sort of like grayish white area, that means that it is urban. So if you put in your address, it will show you that it's like York, Nebraska, of course. It is rural. And then if you're looking at Lincoln, it shows that white gray area is urban or not rural. So that's how you're going to determine your RNC eligibility. What if you are rural in an urban area? So there are a few pockets that we've noticed that we would consider rural, but they're really close to an urban area. And so for some reason, the USDA deems them rural, or excuse me, urban. So if you find that you are one of those locations, please reach out to us and we can offer assistance. We have some discretion over those little pockets of rural areas that are very close to urban, and we can designate them as rural non-congregate if you meet the guidelines. So please reach out to us if you find yourself in this situation. All right, so we've already explored several site types earlier in the training, and there's one more site type that we haven't explored, and that's because it is specific to RNC. So it's a conditional site. So a definition of a conditional non-congregate site is a site that qualifies for program participation because it conducts a non-congregate meal service for eligible children in an area that does not meet the definition of areas in which poor economic conditions exist. So it doesn't meet the definition of a needy area, and also it's not a camp. So sponsors operating a conditional non-congregate site may provide regularly scheduled food service for children in non-area eligible locations. Any area where the free and reduced percentage of students does not reach at least 50%, or the census information does not show that they are in a needy area. So sponsors of conditional non-congregate sites are reimbursed only for the meals served to children whose eligibility for program meals is documented. If the sponsor operates a conditional non-congregate site, it must certify that it will collect information on participants' eligibility to support its claim for reimbursement. Sponsors of conditional non-congregate sites must notify participants of the availability of free meals and if a free meal application is needed, as is required for sponsors of camps and closed enrolled sites. So this is a situation where you have a site, an address, you put it in the SFSP eligibility area eligibility map, and it comes up not in that pink area. So you know that it comes up in that sort of like blue area. So it's not area eligible, but you feel that you have enough students that could benefit from receiving free meals. So what you would do is you would either have them fill out an application stating, anybody, just like they do at a school where they receive a free and reduced meal application, they fill it out, you determine that they are eligible for free or reduced meals, and then you're able to provide them a free meal, even though your site is not in an area eligible location. Or if you are not a school, you can utilize an MOU with a school to receive that information. And it would be on a need to know basis. So you would have children enroll in your program, and then you would reach out to the school and say, here's the children that have enrolled. Could I please receive, their free and reduced meal application? Or if they're on a DC match list, you could receive that information as well. So that's a little bit different. Conditional site is a little bit different than a closed enrolled or a camp, and it's specific to rural non-congregate, and you would only serve the children that are eligible for the free meals at these sites. It would not be open. People could not just show up and get a meal. It would be only these children that are specifically enrolled and qualify for free or reduced meals. And I can answer any questions if those come up. Please let me know. Just to reiterate, for conditional sites, you're providing the meals to only the children eligible to receive free or reduced price meals, enrolled school children and other children in the same household, either by meal application or direct certification match. And then non-school sponsors have two options. You would ask the households to complete the meal application to determine their eligibility, or you would have an MOU with the school to share the information confidentially, of course, and on a need to know basis. So it would be very important to communicate with the families that you are wanting to serve, that you are going to provide this service to them. You would have them enroll in the site so that you would know how many meals to prepare. It's just going to be really important to have very clear communication with these folks so that you know how many meals you're going to be serving and that they know that they can get those meals. Okay. You would utilize a conditional site eligible roster. So again, you'd verify that each child receiving meals is eligible for free or reduced price meals. Meal application will probably have younger siblings included in the members of the household. They could complete a new application if a change in household members and or income. So maybe they had already filled one out for the school and they did not qualify, but now they have, another sibling or two living with them over the summer. So they would be eligible to, or potentially eligible to receive these meals. They would maybe want to fill out a new application. And then utilizing the direct cert lists and the benefit extended to others in the household. So it's very similar to schools, utilizing that information for qualifications on free and reduced meals. So area eligible service methods, grab and go pickup from an area eligible location. So that means you've put your location, your address in the SFSP area eligibility map. You've determined that you are in a needy area. So you're going to have an open site. So anybody that ages 1 to 18 can come and pick up a free meal at your grab and go pickup location, receive a free meal for ages 1 to 18. Or there's another option to do meal delivery to homes with children residing in an eligible area. If you choose to do meal delivery to homes, you must have guardian signed consent to receive the meals for the children. We'll go into that a little bit more here in a couple slides. You can provide meals for up to 5 days, unitized meals and bulk meals, and we'll discuss a little bit in depth those. So bulk items, for example, a loaf of bread and a package of lunch meat may be distributed as bulk items instead of being pre-assembled into individual sandwiches. A unitized meal is a meal that is individually portioned, packaged, and served as a unit. Beverages such as milk or juice may be packaged separately, but served with the unitized meal. And then multi-day, for example, a sponsor may provide 5 days of meals every Monday. Unitized meals served in this fashion would be provided in 5 distinctly packaged units or sets of menu items. Bulk items, while not unitized in this fashion, must still be portioned into specific quantities in line with the applicable meal pattern requirements to preserve the quality of the intended menu items and or meals. So when we're looking at these options, it's important to note you're going to choose how you're going to do this. So some folks might say, we're going to do a congregate breakfast where everyone comes to our open site, they pick up or they sit down, they eat their breakfast, and as they're leaving, they take their lunch for the day with them. Or maybe they take their lunch for that day and then breakfast for the next day and lunch for the next day, right? So you're going to be able to kind of decide based on your staffing, what space you have, how this is going to work. And of course, communicating with your families is going to be very important so that they know exactly how this process is going to work. But there's lots of different ways that can be done with rural non-congregate. So multiple meal considerations. You will use the multi-day count form, and that is included as a handout in the handouts that I emailed out. And it looks very similar to the other meal count form, but in this one, you're able to list the total number of meals per package. So if you sent 3 meals per package and there are 3 children in the home, the number of meals to be claimed for that family is going to be 9, right? So that's something to consider, is utilizing the multi-meal count form. Of course, we want to consider food safety. So you're going to still need to meet all the state and local health and safety requirements. You need to meet storage requirements, and there must be a discard date listed on the food that you decide to send home or send with them. Instructions for children must be identified as to what makes a meal. The preparation instructions should be simple, right? So we don't want kiddos on a stove, an oven, or utilizing knives to prepare their meals. They should be very simple instructions for kids, right? So there's a couple considerations when you're sending multiple meals home, but it really can be up to you on how you can best service your families based on what information you have for your sites. Home delivery. So with home delivery, you must have signed guardian consent to receive meals for children. And that can be a hard copy, an email, electronic form, but you just want to make sure that you have it. You must also make sure that someone, not necessarily the child, must be present to receive those meals. So the meals cannot be left if there's no one there to accept them. We don't want to be sitting, 4 days worth of meals out on a hot July porch and hoping that nobody gets sick, right? So we need to make sure that somebody's present to receive those meals. And that's why we have that guardian consent, and why it's very important to stay into contact with those families, because families go on vacations in the summer, right? So maybe the Joneses are going to text you on Monday and let you know they're going to be there for Monday and Tuesday, but they don't need meals Wednesday and Thursday because they're going to be out of town. So it's really important to determine what your plan is. And that's something, when you are letting us know your RNC plan, that's something that we will ask in the form to fill out. If you choose to do RNC, we'll be asking about these sorts of questions if you choose some of these home delivery or pickup options. Your home delivery consent must contain the household contact information. You've got to be able to get a hold of them if you need to, right? There's got to be a delivery address, the number of eligible children in the household. We want the names of those children, the ages of those children that are in the household, and then of course a signature of the parent or guardian. We have developed a form at NDE. You do not have to use our form, but it does contain all of the required pieces for a home delivery consent form. So we just want to make sure that you know that this is available. It can be tailored to your needs. We left some highlights and spaces in there where you can put in your specific logo, your specific sponsor information. And that is included in the handouts as well. And it's also on our website. If you are wondering, do I need parental guardian consent? This is a little chart that we made. You know, is the standard SFSP public notification okay for grab and go, curbside, or backpack in an area eligible? Yes. Yes, it is. So you can just review this little chart if you're wondering if you need parental or guardian consent. And then RNC site monitoring. If your RNC site has not operated RNC specific previously, it is considered a new site. So if you're considered a new site, you would be completing a pre-operational site visit form, the first 2-week site visit form, and an annual site visit form, just as if you were a brand new site that we had never seen. So even if you operated last year a congregate site, and this year you're operating a non-congregate site, we are going to consider that new for this year. So you must complete all of these site visit forms. Okay. All right. I want to, if you have any other questions, please reach out. I'm going to get to the end of this because, of course, we have our non-discrimination statement is on here that we included. All right. Now it's officially over. Any other questions that we can answer, please either put them in the chat. We'll stay on for a couple minutes, or feel free to reach out to us and we can hopefully answer those for you.